Okay. So in theory, this should be recording.
I mean, it looks like it is.
I feel like you probably spend a lot more time around this type of equipment than
I do,
me.
but I actually try and not make that my job. As a lead singer, I try and just be like, that's someone else's job.
Well, okay, this was actually one of the first things I wanted to ask you, because I know that you do all the creative for the videos as well. Is that correct?
It is correct. I always say I'm the sort of eyes of the band, the eyes and the mouth of the band, but I really rely on the rest of my bandmates to be the ears of the band. They are very much so production savvy and engineer savvy that, when it comes to setting up stuff like this, that's on them.
Sorry, do you mind if I just adjust your mic slightly?
Yeah. So are you getting me loud enough?
Yeah, do you mind talking just into the side
It's
of
not
it?
omnidirectional? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey. How's that?
Sorry, we're a bunch of peasants, so this is...
Can you turn me up on my thing, though?
Yeah, how do we do that?
I'm guessing maybe here, on whatever my channel is.
There
you go. Lovely.
So you rely on the band for as much as...
Yeah, they're really, really talented engineers and producers and stuff like that, so they're super tech savvy. They're really good at it. And I always say, like, a good band should have complementary skill sets. So, like, I'm good at what I do, and they're good at what they do. We don't do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Well, how have you found it being out?
That's our secret.
Well, how have you found it being out in the desert with them? Was it 6 months
Yeah.
in Joshua Tree?
It was 6 months out in Joshua Tree, and I didn't think I was gonna like it as much as I did, but I had an absolute blast. I fell in love with it. It's such a special place out there. Energetically, it just couldn't be more different than Los Angeles. So, when we were essentially, in the thick of this sort of COVID thing, we had decided to kind of go out there. And the minute we got there, it was like all the sort of palpable anxiety that we've been generating in the city of LA. It melted away the minute we got there. And we were just like, it was just really nice to be in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, gosh, I wish I'd come up and visited. I mean, I was out in the desert intermittently throughout the summer and obviously keeping up with you, but it really did. I mean, I think, not that I was analyzing you or anything, but I mean, you became a whole new person, and it was inspiring.
We went native on it, you know what I mean? Like, we were just like, we really embraced the whole vibe, and, everyone was just like, you can't go out there like being the kid who wears all black and goth kid in LA, because for one, it's 120 degrees. You can't wear all black out there, you'll die. So, like, when all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my god, look at Three Teeth out there wearing earth tones, and, like, we just really, we were like barbecuing every night, and like I got, we were like smoking like, brisket for 6 hours, and just like, it was just like make music, burn meat on flame, and then like dine together, and it just became the sort of like ritual of how we sort of enjoyed our days, and woke up, hiked, worked on music, occasionally do a second hike, and then cooked, and I was sort of de facto band chef, which I really enjoyed that role.
What was your go-to other than the brisket?
No, I mean, I'd make different stuff every, typically Sundays I'd make pasta, because it would be like we'd go grocery shopping on Monday, and it's like you just make pasta with what's left from the week.
That's so Italian of you.
Of course.
That's the most stereotypical thing I think I've ever heard you
chopped
say.
kitchen, like, let's see what we got in here. We're making this pasta. But yeah, it was a blast, and I think it really helped with sort of like, we'd been a band for, I don't know, 7 years now, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that long, but we tour pretty extensively. So, bands in general, like, it's tough for everyone to get along all the time, and it's as expected not to be. So I think that, like, going out there and living together was a good way for us to sort of, like, I don't know, reconnect, and really start to appreciate each other, and just sort of like, I don't know, it was really interesting. It was like some sort of like retreat for us, you know what I mean? Like, as much as we were all working, it really became a place for us to sort of like, I don't know, like, it was good for our mental health, as a band. You know what I mean? To not be like, oh, we see each other when we're like feverishly touring and exhausted and getting drunk every night. It was like we're all like living together and cohabitating and like doing healthy things. You know what I mean? Which is like, it was pretty cool. You know?
Yeah, it's a whole different lived experience. And I mean, it sounds like you guys almost became more of like a family then, I guess, like more like a tribe.
And we've always been like pretty tight knit as a band. Like we're all friends and get along, which is like almost impossible for most bands. And yeah, for us to sort of like, you know, just it's the only people you see. You know what I mean? Like you're in the middle of nowhere, so it's like you somehow really start to like savor the time around people. So it's like, you know, everyone would be like off doing different things because we kind of set up different studios. So when we would all dine together, it was always like good to catch up and talk and hang out. You know?
That's so lovely. And then Sony kind of covered or like footed the bill for you guys being up there. I love Joshua Tree.
Yeah, they did. You know, that was sort of the saving grace on you know, being signed to Sony, and you know, as the world sort of fell apart with COVID and going, oh my God, what the fuck are we gonna do this year? Sorry, can you swear?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You know, where we just didn't know what we were gonna do. We just like, all right, like we just put out a record like a year ago.
Yeah.
So for us, it was like, hey, let's go and see if Sony will be like, hey, let's do another record, because I'm not just gonna sit around here with my fucking, you know, doing nothing. They were like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And I kind of put together this plan where we were all gonna, you know, I put together the budget, and they approved it, and you know, we moved out there, and the rest was history. You know.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
because we met, I think, right after you were signed with Sony.
I think so, yeah. Just shortly thereafter, maybe before the record had come out even.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe I think the record was finished, but it hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's been a few years.
I know. Where the fuck is time going? It's crazy.
Well, that's the other thing about living. I've also realized living in Los Angeles, and sorry for everyone listening at home dealing with Wonky throwing himself around the apartment.
There are cats everywhere.
And this is like
the place is being overrun by cats.
Well, this is another reason why I need to get a bigger place, because they keep fucking moving in as well.
You need like a guest house for all your cats.
I would love that.
Yes.
Well, that's the other thing about Joshua Tree, is when I did have my house up there, obviously I didn't let them out too much because they'd get eaten by the other wildlife. But they at least had like acreage again to roam in.
Yeah, but you know, coyotes and cats don't make good bedmates.
No, they don't. Funnily though, I think Pippin would probably fuck up a coyote. He's pretty good at fucking up the dog. But you'd be lunch. Yes, you would.
He just leaped over my microphone.
He loves to frolic. He's a bit of a slut, this one. But
I can relate.
Same. No, it was lovely to kind of see your life up there, like almost like vicariously through.
I felt like a lot of people were living vicariously through the stories, and we tried to keep it as much content as possible to kind of keep, you know, it's hard to maintain a sense of buzz and relevancy when you're not touring at all. So it's like we had to sort of create some sort of entertainment for the fan base and stuff like that, and people were loving the food porn, as they called it, and you know, the general kind of humor of all our videos, and occasionally burying dead rabbits because there's, you know, some fucking rabbit Ebola sickness, so we like buried like, you know, a rabbit every week out there. It was crazy.
Jeez. Yeah, I was gonna say, when we were out there, when I was out there, I found fair few dead bunnies, fair few dead thumpers.
When we first moved out there, no one told us about that. And like, we found like, you know, a dead rabbit like on our doorstep day one.
Jesus.
When we woke up, and I was like, dude, how is this rabbit dead here? Like, we just thought like some crazy like Hills Have Eyes rednecks were like, get out of here, city slickers. So like they like left us this like dead rabbits like as a sign to like, you know, get the fuck out of there. And we were like, oh my God, what is this? And then like the next one, we were like, you know, and then we like talked to the landlord, and she was like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys that like, you know, there's this whole like rabbit, you know, Ebola thing going on right here. Didn't want to freak you out. And I was like, no, I'm like much less freaked out than like how my mind was going about all the other possibilities of like, you know, some skinwalker leaving like rabbits outside of our house. So,
I've just realized I haven't put my phone on airplane mode, so I'm gonna have to quickly jump off for a sec just to make sure that no one. Oh no, you're good. Like if you want to text, I mean.
Oh right. Oh yeah, because you're recording from yours.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that no rankers call me and it fucks everything up. Do this. Do that. And are we still going? Oh, good. That didn't seem to fuck anything up too much at all. I am going to move this slightly so you're more in shot, though. There we go. That's better.
Perfect.
But, We like to do things kind of as guerrilla style as possible.
Of course.
Like, why beg for consistency when it would drive me insane? But so yeah, Dead Rabbits aside, Joshua Tree is good. You got the album done.
The album's not done, but we've certainly made quite a bit of progress on it, and I think that a large portion of what we did figure out there is like what we were going to write about, and I think that having done 3 records in Los Angeles, I think that environments can greatly inform the content of one's work. So for us, it was like getting out to Joshua Tree and being inspired by a completely different location, completely different sense of environment. It helped me put together what I call it, a sort of like concept deck, where it's like this 12-page document that if you printed it out would be 9 feet tall, and each sort of portion of it is a song, and it kind of serves as the sort of like formula for how to get from 1 to 12. So like creating that in the first month of being there, it was really hugely important. Obviously I had to take a lot of LSD to do that.
I mean, I'm so proud. Yes, thank you.
So like, getting like deeply inspired by what really felt like being off world. It was something to keep, like, it just felt like we were off world. It felt like we were in Mars. Do you know what I mean? Like, couldn't see anyone for as far as the eye could see. We had this incredibly secluded place right on the western edge of the actual park. Like, if we walked out of our place, you could just walk right into the park by going under a barbed wire fence that said federal property, which we did all the time. It's not that big of a deal. But just sort of having that sense of perspective that was really, really priceless to us. So, once we had that, so much of writing a record, you're like, what are we going to write a record about? And like, especially when you just wrote a record, and Meta War as a record felt like it is still playing out right now with its relevancy. So I felt like what I didn't want to do was write Meta War Part 2. Like I had no desire to like make an addendum to my last record, so I wanted to write something very different, and I felt like really, and I don't want to give too much away of any of that stuff, so I'll keep my cards close to my chest, but we have certainly settled on concepts for each song and the general concept of the record that is extremely different from anything that we've done. So
we're going to have to do at least one follow-up when you can talk about it. That sounds very exciting. And I mean, I'm thrilled. Like, I'm not a huge U2 fan, but pretty much every other band that's done any work out in Joshua Tree, I'm a fan of. I'm glad you didn't go full Graham Parsons.
No. We didn't shoot enough heroin into our toes. Or whatever he died of, but yeah. Yeah,
I was going to say, I can never remember whether he was like he did some kind of crazy mescaline and all that kind of shit. I think
that guy was, he went off the deep end. But we were sort of inspired by like learning about him out there, because I didn't really know about his story until like, you're out there and you become sort of very aware of all the Joshua Tree-esque things, of all the lore that exists out there. So it was cool to learn about him.
It's a very bohemian part of the world.
It really is. It's weird though too, because like the more time you spend out there, you learn how the sort of like there's like various pockets of it. So it's like, and it was like separated by like, Yucca Valley was like very Trump, and then Joshua Tree is very Biden, and then I think 29 Palms is very Trump. So it's like, it's sort of like this weird bohemian sort of like super like liberal zone wedged in by these two very much so like rednecky vibes on the either side. And I loved it all. I'm one of those people that I can sort of I go like to the gun range in Yucca and hang out with all those people that, and then I go back and hang out, like, go to a sound bath later in Joshua Tree. So it's like sort of like existing in this total, like, play by no rules, be able to like walk through, all crowds and sort of exist in that space. I thought was really cool. And it actually shed a lot of perspective on what was going on, because when you're in LA, you're sort of stuck in this extreme bubble of how you think things are. But, going out and like, I'm a very liberal person. But then, like, meeting, like, Trump supporters at the gun range who are just, like, super sweet people.
They're lovely.
Yeah, they're just lovely people who, like, maybe they don't get stuff. Maybe they're just hyper brainwashed. But, at the end of the day, it's like you just realize that, like, there's a lot more in common that we all have than less. And I think that being in a place like that allowed me to sort of get a lot more perspective. It was cool. Like, I was kind of, like, more focused on just, like, finding patterns in the human experience out there, within sort of bound by natural law, as opposed to like getting caught up in like partisan politics and all the hype that like, you know, was being like, I didn't turn on TV or anything out there for 6 months. So it helped me sort of like gain a lot of insight and sort of perspective into not getting caught up in bullshit.
I was going to say, I mean, you're like everything obviously that I see that you post is very much in that mentality of like almost like non-partisan politics. It's just like fuck, not even like a fuck politics perspective, but more of that humanitarian.
I like to maintain a bit of an absurdist approach because I feel like one of the only sort of weapons against partisan politics is sort of, you know, absurdism and humor, because it sort of like has to reflect how stupid all of that is. You know, I think like you can't preach against preachers, but what you can do is sort of like, you know, reflect how stupid the whole thing is. So, you know, I actually try to avoid as much politics as possible out there. And, you know, as a band that has sort of been known for writing political music, there's nothing political about this record.
But I wouldn't say, like, even the music that you
it's
have
like
written... Yeah, I was going to say, it's not political in the sense of, like, do, think, feel this way. It's more political in the sense of, like, a macro ideology. Like, I guess the next thing that I really wanted to ask you about, and that I've been wanting to ask you about for years, is Operation Mindfuck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, and Operation Mindfuck was developed by one of my favorite thinkers, Robert Anton Wilson, and he had developed Operation Mindfuck as a sort of like decentralized movement of like anyone who, you know, essentially wants to be part of Operation Mindfuck can be part of Operation Mindfuck by like integrating sort of this what would we call guerrilla ontology. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Ontological sort of attack on, you know, essentially absolutes and all these dogmatic principles that sort of make up what is a very limiting perspective on existence. So, you know, a lot of it is through absurdism and humor and comedy, and that's sort of what we built our fan group around, which is called OMF, and there's a big, wild, crazy bunch of people who are participating in that now.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, for anyone kind of listening at home, what's the kind of elevator pitch? Because, I mean, it sounds fucking wonderful. Like, I would love to be a part of it.
I mean, the elevator pitch is really that reality had it coming. You know what I mean? Like, for us, it's sort of an assault on reality in general. So I think that, like, you know, if you want to learn about it and, you know, you feel sympathetic to the movement in and of itself, then, you know, start Googling Operation Mindfuck, and I'm sure you'll go down a rabbit hole of weird shit.
And I hope a lot of people who are listening, they probably will, and now I'm going to get an inbox full of people talking about it and wanting to join, and I'm excited to see what, like, that kind of mini social experiment plays out like.
Totally.
I think it's going to be fun.
It's like, you know, it kind of, it operates itself. I mean, there's about 5,000 people involved in it at this point, and I just kind of go hands off with it.
Well, there's nothing like lighting the match and then watching it burn, I guess.
Totally, yeah. I mean, you know, it's got some really good admins, which are great because I really trust in those people. One's based, I think, in Florida, and the other's based in Australia, so they kind of have the time zones covered. So, like, there is, you know, there's rules to it to a certain extent, you know what I mean? But other than that, yeah, it kind of, like, reminds me of, like, Project Mayhem or something from Fight Club, but... it's pretty zany.
That's awesome, though. There's not enough of that kind of creativity out there. I think, like, a lot of people take themselves, or at least, like, what I've discovered over the course of, like, these conversations and being an immigrant, obviously, in America and studying people, I feel like if everyone took themselves a lot less seriously, we'd all be significantly happier.
I agree. I mean, that was sort of one of Robert Anton Wilson's principles of something called E prime, where if you sort of attempt to dispense is from your vocabulary, people would be a lot more sane. So instead of saying the grass is green or Beethoven is better than Bach, you would say things like, to me, Beethoven might be better than Bach, or something like that, or to me, the grass looks green. So it's like, instead of just being so absolutely, like, it's one of the hardest things you can ever do. And it's sort of like, you know, it's like almost inducing a sort of Zen Buddhist approach if you can do it. But taking is out of your vocabulary is almost impossible because we are so programmed to speak in absolutes. So, you know, it's an exercise worth trying.
And I mean, that at least to me, sounds like it would also provoke a lot of conversation. So one of the things that I feel very starved from, or starved of, I guess, living in, I don't know whether it's Los Angeles or the States or what, maybe it's just how I was raised, but me and my family, my friends, the tribe that I grew up with, then like we would sit and we would talk. Like family dinners would take hours because we were having long, involved conversations with no real point to them, just to kind of debate and work through and perpetuate our own kind of like knowledge growth through one another.
People in the UK generally have a much greater gift for the gab, if you will, than Americans. I feel like you guys have a better grasp of how language should be used. And I think that people in, much of America, there's a sort of large anti-intellectual trend that, people hate really smart people these days, which is astounding to me because,
Well, I feel like in the States, smarts are so, like at least all of the people that, and I don't include you, I mean, I can't include my co-host Danny in this because he has no kind of like barely graduated high school and is the most successful person I know type thing. And obviously I know you personally, so I'm biased and I know that you're very well read. So I think that helps. I think the British education system also kind of enforces that kind of growth. And plus, like, we live in the pub. So if you can't communicate, you can't leave your home because you won't have any friends. You won't be able to get a job. It's like very much part of the norm. But like out here, that kind of hatred of smart people, at least from what I've seen, it seems to me like, how do I say it without seems to me to be more of like an actual like wealth issue. Like, oh, you went to college, therefore you must have a lot of money because it costs a lot of money to go to college type shit. And then there's also the superiority complex that goes with being a graduate from a university in America.
Which is funny you say that, because I oftentimes think about how, here you have this like wealthy New Yorker, real estate mogul, billionaire Donald Trump, who somehow like developed a culture code for getting, the redneck from Texas to sort of like, hey, I like that guy. And you just think that not in a million years would someone give a shit about that guy if they're from Texas, or somehow be like, hey, we like that guy. But I feel like the culture code was based on things like the vocabulary that he spoke with and the level of intelligence that he sort of emanated. So I think that he was just more relatable to the working class, not because he was a working class character, but he sounded not so smart. And I think that was something that they liked about him. He had that like Joe Sixpack appeal because, he was just kind of like a blowhard who'd go up there and not sound like, the Kennedy Harvard educated intellectual that oftentimes scare the shit out of, the Southern strategy states. So, I think that it's interesting because you were talking about it maybe correlated to wealth or something like that, but apparently it's not, because the man with the gold toilet was somehow loved by, the backwoods,
That's so...
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about it like that. So do you think it is to do with, like, phraseology? I mean, it's funny, actually, you mentioned that. I wrote a piece a couple of years ago that went into detail on Donald Trump's use of language. And, I mean, it wasn't based on... Like, the piece wasn't designed to kind of make this argument at all. It was designed to kind of show how, like, limited one's social circles are when you don't have that kind of, like... literacy, literally.
I don't think people, whether or not they are being condescended, but when you start to use a certain vocabulary, obviously it can come across as condescending. And I think that has to do with like, when you're dealing with sort of semiotic codes, that, if you're approaching something from a level of consciousness that is like at a 7, maybe you can talk to a 9 and an 8, but you typically can't talk to a 2. So it's like, if you're like approaching it from a 3, you can talk to a 2 and a 4 type of thing. So I just think that it sort of was a little bit more of a sweet spot for how most of this country operates. And I just think it came down to sort of that level of semiotic coding, I suppose.
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I completely would support that hypothesis. I think you're pretty on the money there, but it's the same thing like what you said earlier when you're going to the gun range in Yucca Valley. I spent a fair amount of this year traveling to places like Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and just like purely as a result of this show was exposed to a lot of, I guess, more Trump supporters, especially being on KABC. There's like that kind of automatically puts you in a pool of more like right-leaning conservatives. And I think you're completely correct about the condescending tone and how off-putting that is, because I mean it's one of the biggest reasons why I'm just so ready to get out of Los Angeles and sick of people trying to police my morality. But I think, at least for what I've observed, the Trump supporters that I've spent time with, yeah, they might use simpler terms, but they have simpler lives. They have normal lives.
I also think there's two different types of Trump supporters. The sort of, the commoner that we're talking about, but then there's also just the super rich white people who just don't want to be taxed as much. Obviously those people may or may not be educated, but I do think that I don't think it comes down to necessarily someone being worse of a person or better of a person.
Oh, no, not at all.
It comes down to, I think, just like semiotic coding, and we live in a time period where tools of perception management are at an all-time high, to the point where we're connected through this sort of like prosthetic digital nervous system more than ever of the internet, whether through our devices or laptops or iPads, whatever. We're pretty much constantly connected. So with the advent of the way that you have Facebook that has however 15,000 data points per person, they know you better than you. So it's like the idea that you have even a chance or at developing a free thought on your own. No, the influence is the echo chamber that we all live in. And I feel like when we approach this election season, the partisan politics echo chambers, they were amplified about as high as they ever could be, to the point where wearing a mask became a partisan battleground. Where here we are in a public health emergency, and somehow wearing a mask became a piece of like, oh, you either, if you don't wear the mask, then you're this, or if you wear the mask, it's like, just fucking wear the mask. What the fuck does that have to do with politics? You know what I mean? It's like, put the fucking mask on. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like going, I deal with I build a lot of rifles and stuff like that. Whenever I go into gun stores, it's like, if you wear the mask in the gun store, they're like, people will be like, call you out for wearing a mask.
Really? Like people who work there, or like people who shop there, or both?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Are you comfortable? Do you want me to move this out the way?
No,
you
totally
good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not as comfortable as this cat that's sleeping next to me, but...
Oh, and he's waiting for you to like stroke his tummy and all that kind of stuff as well. Yeah, that's his like rub my belly. Yeah. Oh, Wonky, you're such a good boy. But okay, so you build rifles.
I do.
Could we unpack that a bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack, and I feel like it's one of those topics that becomes slightly controversial. But for me, I build rifles from scratch. From a stripped lower receiver to a strip upper receiver, and every other piece between it. I just really like the idea of like crafting and building something that's precision and taking it to the range and shooting it and tuning it to the point where it's like, for me, I like the precision sports aspect of it. I'm not a big self-defensive gun owner. I'm not one of those people like, I got a gun in the kitchen, I got a gun in here, and I got a gun over there, and I got a gun in my glove box, and I have my conceal and carry permit. And you're like, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm not one of those like people like live in fear. Like, if someone broke into my house, I wouldn't get my gun. You know what I mean? Like, I'd grab the bat that I have behind my door, because like I don't really want to shoot anyone, and I don't want to discharge my weapon in a way that essentially that becomes part of an investigation. They would take your gun after that, no matter what happened. I like all my guns. I put a lot into them. So for me, yeah, I'm not this big sort of self-defensive gun owner. I do own quite a few rifles, maybe 9 rifles at this point, but only one handgun, just a Glock. But it's pretty pimped out, the Glock.
I was going to say, so do you build, like, sorry to sound like a complete novice, I'm absolutely fascinated with the actual mechanics of how you build the gun.
Yeah, so
that's like, how do you source the parts?
So the stripped lower receiver is what you'd call the actual serialized part of the weapon, the part that's regulated by the DOJ. And at that point, so you go in there to a gun store and you'd say, I want to buy a stripped lower receiver. A stripped lower receiver looks like a paperweight. It has nothing in it. It's just a piece of aluminum, usually aircraft grade aluminum that, it's hard to explain because I could show it to you, but I'm not sure it's going to help with your listeners. But they could look up what a strip load receiver looks like, and at that point, they would consider that the firearm. Obviously, it's literally a paperweight.
Yeah.
It does nothing, but they treat that as the firearm because there has to be one part of the weapon that's serialized. So,
okay.
Meaning that you'd go in there and you'd still have to wait 10 days to get it from a background check, and then you could come pick it up, and they'd hand that to you, and you'd have to treat it like a weapon.
Wait, so what is the functionality, though, of that piece?
That's where the magazine would go into, the trigger would be, the fire control group or the trigger would go to. You'd attach the stock to that. You'd put the pistol grip to that, and then you would attach the upper receiver to that, where essentially the barrel would be connected to the handguard, the ejection port, the things that essentially the BCG or the bolt carrier group. Mm-hmm. So you connect those two things together, and you essentially have a gun.
So it's like the kind of it's like the catalyst that everything else fits into.
It's the chassis of the truck.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm trying to, like, me with I like guns. I'm a huge Second Amendment proponent because I live in America. So go America! If that's what you guys do here, I'm all for it. I'm a new person here, so I support that.
Yeah.
What the fuck do I know?
It's just part of American culture at this point. So people are like, hey, we're gonna get rid of guns. I'm like, that ship sailed.
Yeah,
you know
it's not happening.
Like when I show you what a strip lower receiver looks like, you could 3D print one of these if you wanted to.
That was going to be my next question. Is this the kind of thing?
All it is. And there's nothing in there. It's just that. That's
okay.
That's the gun.
So you could theoretically, because that was you can see where my mind goes. So you could, or I could theoretically, my fucking neighbor's 6-year-old kid who has a 3D printer for some reason.
It would be a felony offense, but yes.
Oh, okay. So it's at least scheduled.
Well, because that would be considered a ghost gun because I said that part of the weapon is serialized and controlled by the DOJ. Mm-hmm. So that way, they know that's a registered rifle to you.
And you can't build a gun without that entire chassis.
You can't build a gun without that. Absolutely not. Unless,
yeah.
of course, you did 3D print it, in which case you would be making a felony offense.
That's so interesting.
But my point is that, by creating all these sort of laws and legislation that sort of prohibit good law-abiding gun owners from, enjoying their weapons, mm-hmm. they're rarely, going to be getting in the way of the guy who wants to, rob the bank or commit some sort of crime. It's like that guy's going to be, first of all, there's going to be a gun that he can get off the streets illegally. Not to mention if they really wanted to, they could figure out a way to make that. So it's like, that's why I say that ship has sailed. It's like this country in many ways was founded on firearms, literally, there's the shot heard around the world in the War of, Lexington Concord, where the Minutemen fired that first rifle on your people, the British Army.
It was the English, not my people. I'm fucking Welsh.
This is true. And that's what kicked off the American Revolution. So it's weird. The country was literally founded on one single bullet that mm-hmm. Was fired in Lexington, Concord, Massachusetts, and where I'm from. Shout out to Massachusetts. Guns are impossible to get there, ironically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very hard. California and Massachusetts and New York are some of the strictest states when it comes to gun legislation. And I don't have much of an issue with it, to be totally honest. I just think a lot of the rules that they pass here are completely pointless. They don't stop anything. They just make it a hassle for most gun builders. But yeah, I think that the DNA of this country is very much so founded on firearms and the Second Amendment. Most countries, for that matter, are founded on some sort of bloodshed. But the idea that it's the Second Amendment. We have our First Amendment right, and the Second Amendment is there to typically protect the First Amendment. So,
and I mean, go America.
Yeah, again, I'm a very liberal person when it comes mm-hmm. to sort of believing in social equality and pro-choice and such, and mm-hmm. I also like my Second Amendment right, and there's typically not a lot of space for that type of person. So I feel like I'm constantly battling off either side. Where it's like,
I know that.
Yeah, it's like I don't fit anywhere because I am not represented by either of these dog shit political parties. So.
Well, that's another reason why I think you and I both so desperately trying to get out of Los Angeles is to find that acreage, have space to, at least what I was pitched before moving to America was this idea that you can still live with that kind of ideological freedom. And for me, that's having enough space to raise a family, to shoot guns if I want to shoot guns, to... Anyway.
To be free, goddammit.
To be goddamn free. But I think it's also like very telling. Like a lot of my British friends will contact me and be like, how can you live in America with all those guns? And it's just like, I was stabbed twice in fucking high school, and I've seen at least one bombing be de-escalated before it turned into a bombing. I've also been part of another bombing, and that was all in countries with no guns. And I would much rather, having been held at gunpoint here, I would much rather get held at gunpoint again than go through another bombing.
And I just thought, to me, it's more of a question of understanding the problems from a holistic understanding, where it's like, at the end of the day, taking away people's guns is not going to prevent violence, or even gun violence for that matter.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like water will find a way to the ground, and if someone's fucked up enough and wants to be violent, they'll find a way to be violent and to kill people. I think that we need to approach our understanding of how to remedy this in society through a holistic approach with things like the education system, mental health, aspects of America that are really negated tremendously, which I think end up creating things like gun violence. But again, gun violence, gun is just the adjective in describing what gun violence is. Violence is the thing that's happening. So I think if you want to cut down on violent crimes in general, I think we have to create more opportunity for disenfranchised people, because those are the people who are committing crimes. Those are the people who are lashing out in society. So it's like, how do you create systems to engage every portion of society with senses of opportunity? And I think that those are conversations that rarely happen because they're maybe too complicated. So everyone just says, all right, let's just pass a gun bill so I can please my constituency, as the sort of charade that says, hey, I care. Shit.
That's the only reason anything fucking happens, like anywhere. It's just like, oh, I need to get voted back in, so I'm just going to do everything to placate my caucuses here, that's and they'll suck me off and put me back in office.
Totally, and the government doesn't give a shit about you, and everyone who does, it's like you just gotta get rid of that idea. The government doesn't give a shit about you.
I mean, that was like one of the saddest things that I realized I even played into with my own work. I got caught up in the hype a lot this year, and it's been, look, it's like the first year of my life I could literally fly my entire family out to visit, and they can't even cross the bridge to go into England to visit the English halves of my family. You know what I mean? It's just fucking miserable and depressing, and I miss them like shit. But it's very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I was very disappointed by how the two-party system really did such a great job of making us think that either party was really important or valuable, and like ideology, and it created like an ideology. I mean, similar to sports, right? That's what a lot of my colleagues keep saying.
I find it very akin to sports in many ways, because it's like, I'm from Boston, which is a huge sports town. I don't really give a shit about sports, but the big rivalry is Red Sox versus the Yankees. And in Boston, it's never even so much about Boston's the best. It's just more about saying Yankees suck, which is like, to me, I feel like where partisan politics is right now. People aren't so much like, even like the Democrats aren't like, we love Joe. They're like, fuck Trump. And like, it's just like, it's like a mud throwing match on either side at this point, which is not necessarily the highest point of consciousness when you're approaching how a world should be governed. So I think that we need a tremendous amount of reformation in our political systems in this country, in ways that we need to remember that these are civil servants here, people. And when you look at the average level of wealth between a senator or a congressman, and most of them are millionaires and billionaires. How would they understand anything? Millionaires and billionaires, like, having more money generally makes you, it doesn't make you a better person.
No.
It usually exacerbates any compulsions or whatever things that you do in your life, because you're like, cool, now I can do this infinitely. So it generally makes people worse. It accelerates their fucking asshole qualities. And it certainly doesn't make them relatable to how to govern or look out for people in this world. This is why no one passes fucking things that benefit anyone of the working class. There's very few people from the working class involved in American politics. American politics shouldn't be a way to get wealthy. It should be a civil servant position. It shouldn't be a goddamn sports team. You shouldn't be wearing fucking hats and fucking t-shirts from your favorite politician. That is not okay. This should never be okay. It should be fucking boring, hard civil servant work that is actually trying to benefit this country. And it doesn't. At this point, it's just fucking, the level of populist rhetoric exists on both sides. We're in like this bumper sticker fucking bullshit, whether it be people saying make America great again or all cops are bastards. None of it is particularly beneficial or constructive to anything. It's just fucking bullshit populism. It's like, put it on a hat, we could sell it maybe, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll put the ACAB on the hat, or we'll sell the other hat to the people that say MAGA, and it's like the same fucking shit.
They've commodified politics. They finally fucking did it. Capitalism finally did it.
Capitalism in America is almost like auto-commoditizing. It just commoditizes itself perpetually over and over again.
It's so... oh, God. Okay. I'm so thrilled that you said all of this. Because, yeah, it's like one of the things that... at least we're trying to do in work right now is define the American culture. It's like this big thing. Like, what is the American culture? This country's been around for 250 years. At least in my opinion, there isn't an American culture. There's a state level culture. I think we've got...
It's a big place, but yes.
Yeah, it's a really big fucking place. But I think that kind of notion of how can we commodify this... Yeah. That question has
pure unbridled, unchecked capitalism. That is American culture.
Yeah.
It's the ability to essentially, make a gift shop at 9/11. Do you know what I mean? Like to turn 9/11 into a brand, which it really has become. It's like, sell your Never Forget t-shirts and put, this and that. It's like, when you're literally making a gift shop at the 9/11 memorial, you can go, I think we've reached sort of peak accelerationist bullshit.
Yeah. It's like we can get rid of at least 2/3 of us at this point.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to contribute anything of positivity.
Easy Thanos.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a part of me that goes straight to nihilism when it comes to...
I try and avoid that. To me, I feel like it's an easy path as well to sort of just completely sort of just get nihilistic and sort of almost misanthropic about it. But I try and remain somewhat optimistic and sort of trying to create at least some, I studied political science for a reason. It's to be able to think about this stuff without just going, fuck it all. Which is an easy response. And I think that the apathy is also half the reason why we've gotten here. So it's like the only people who are even willing to engage in that stuff are either getting caught up in the bullshit and drinking the Kool-Aid, and most of the people who are intelligent enough just say, fuck it, I don't care. So it's like, all right, then that's going to be their game, that's theirs now, which is, it's tough, it's sort of, I'm not sure it'll ever get better, but...
Well, I mean, you are also in a line of work that I think actually inspires way more change than politics actually does. Like, I certainly, like, coming from the UK, obviously music it's drinking culture and music culture. They go hand in hand. Everything is based around that. Every single weekend, 3 nights a week, you're going to go out to either a bar or a club or a venue, and you're going to drink with your friends. You're going to dance your ass off, something that I miss all day, every day. Yeah. And you're going to engage with the music that inspires you to escapism. Like, we don't have that same kind of vibe normally because the weather doesn't really allow for that kind of going outside and enjoying yourself type fun. And, one of the things that we have in the UK that's really important for us is like the Christmas number 1. So like whatever the song is at Christmas is like, you're going to hear it nonstop. It's going to be... And for years, after Pop Idol and X Factor came out, the Christmas number 1 was always whoever won that fucking show. And then Britain all of a sudden turned around one year and was just like, you know what? Most of us don't like these fucking shows. Most of us love music for the kind of... the revolution it creates. Like, I always go back to
the authenticity of emotion, not sort of like manufacturing a pop star via a contest that people fucking vote in, that then like, a bunch of fucking marketing execs fucking put through a bunch of focus groups and decide on how they're going to brand the new record so they can sell as many. It's like, that shit absolutely destroys music. That is like, if music was a hypersigil, that is like what's like smashing the hypersigil to pieces. It's like music has gotten a lot worse as a result of this.
Oh, absolutely.
And music culture in general is you think of music as being something that like people wouldn't exist. Like they can't. Life without music is hard to imagine. Like it's like one of the driving forces that keep people going. But if music is that important to people, and it is that vital to our existence and the human experience, then why is the royalty rate on Spotify like 0.00001? Like, why is it so insanely devalued? As a person that makes their living off it, you can't make money off music. You have to make money off touring.
And that's what been one of the biggest shifts. Okay, so I have two things. First thing, Britain rebelled and we made Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of Christmas #1 because we were like, fuck you, X Factor, and that felt good. And every time Trump comes into town, we make American Idiot the #1.
Awesome.
So it plays nonstop. But yeah, the second thing though being, so obviously the shift, like bands used to, this is me, like my dad, this is my dad coming through. I'm going to basically give you his spiel. But back when he was growing up, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, bands would make all of their money from the record because people would buy the record and then they would lie around in their homes and they would listen to it together because the TV turned off at 10 p.m. Because there was, again, Britain, there's fuck all else to do. And now you make all of your money from touring because there's no money because of the internet.
Everyone's just streaming music, and I feel like at this point, like, yeah, music is more of the marketing program for ticket sales. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's all it really is to generate an audience enough to sort of say, hey, can you pack out a room? And there's still a fair amount of money in live music, back when there was live music. So you could make a living if you were willing to really pound the pavement and be on the road extensively, which we were as a band.
I remember. Well, that's why it's taken so fucking long for us to get together and do this.
Totally. So, I feel like it's sort of a sad state of affairs when really, you have to like be willing to just like burn yourself out to create a career in music, which is why I think the advent of the DJ became so huge, where it's like, here you have a guy who's just like he jumps on a flight by himself with a USB drive, plugs it in. They have the fucking lights programmed to that shit. Boom, 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 boom. Makes a fucking shitload of money. People love it. And, the idea that, like, going around and traveling with a band and hauling on this gear and setting it up, it's like, it's just almost like archaic at this point. It's like, it will be gone. It won't exist forever. Bands will slowly fade away.
So, are you going to write the book next?
No.
To accompany the albums?
I've got a lot more gray hairs before I put a book out. But yeah, I'm still, I think I'm focusing on the record and, just really making some banging music videos. And I'll sit on this record until I see light at the end of the tunnel in terms of touring. And I've seen that, our agents are booking a lot of tours for Q4 of next year. So that's a sign of faith that should be back. And, they usually are privy to a lot of that understanding of, where we're at. And I've seen that Ticketmaster released their protocol and how it's all going to work, etc., which is very bizarre, Brave New World vibes. But, it's like when I was doing a live stream, I talk with my fans every week, and, we were talking about the protocol from Ticketmaster, and I was like, so what do you guys think? Would you guys be willing to get the vaccine to go back to shows? And someone was like, shoot my ear full of pig's piss if I can go back to a concert. So I was like, apparently people are going to be excited to go back to concerts.
Wait, so you're going to have to like get vaccines to do the shows like you're going to have to get the vaccine to do the show?
If we can take a break, because I'm going to take a piss real quick.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
we'll
sure. I've also got to pee. Yeah, and I'm going to have another beer because it's Friday and I want one. Would you like anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Ooh. Hi. Hello, little cat. How are you doing? Fucking loud ass motherfuckers. Oh, fat boy. thanks so much for coming out.
Of course.
This is so much. I mean, like, I love my job, but like, this is lovely.
Actually, what kind of beers do you have?
Oh, I have lots of different types of beer. I have Corona, I have Kronenberg, I have 805s, and Stella.
A Kronenberg sounds good.
I used to live off Kronenbergs as an adolescent. My mum made a joke, gosh, probably like 6 months ago now at this point, that she was amazed I wasn't more fat as a child because of the amount of beer I used to drink. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for coming. Oh gosh.
Seconds.
I'm back in here for part two.
Part
2 with beers.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
To talk about the vaccine.
So are you gonna get? I mean, I want to have at least 3 children before I get this fucking vaccine.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe you could get 1 to 3 heads, and you could knock them out to a threefer.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. Can't wait.
More efficient, less birthing to do. But no, so what Ticketmaster released was sort of their protocol, more speculative protocol, and I think how it would work, where it's like, they're going to have a third-party company that, when you get the vaccine, kind of holds your vaccine credentials that last for a year, apparently. It's only good for a year, so that way, when you buy your ticket, those third-party credentials from that company allow you to purchase your ticket. Or you can get a test that within 24 to 48 hours or something like that, if it comes out negative, you can also purchase your ticket, which seems more than reasonable to me. So they're not forcing you to get the vaccine. You can get your test, and with those third-party credentials from this verified group or whatever, you can purchase your ticket. Obviously, it's a hassle, but this is just the world we're living in right now.
Exactly. Like, just get the fuck over. It's like you said earlier about the mask. Like, just fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would
also, the testing is fucking easy. Because we're working on a record, Sony would sort of have us get tested, and working in studios with producers, it's sort of a professional courtesy. So I've been tested like fucking 20 times. And it takes 2 fucking seconds. I don't get it why we don't just say, and I know some people, it's like sort of a war on their civil liberties. But at the end of the day, if you were like, hey, this next stimulus check, if you get tested, you get $2,000.
Everyone's
I guarantee
gonna,
everyone would fucking get tested, and at least we'd have at least a clear understanding of where that exists. So it's like, I don't know, why is that, with all the infinite wisdom and the fucking money of this government, how could they not make that happen?
Yeah.
That seems fucking incredibly easy. We 3,000 people died during 9/11, and then we spent $10 trillion on fighting a pointless war in Iraq. But yet somehow they're dragging their feet after 250,000 people have died in the U.S. to fucking give you another stimulus package. So it's like, if that's not evidence that the government doesn't give a fuck about you, then I don't really know what is.
I mean, okay, going back to, I really want to kind of hark on this, like, the government doesn't give a fuck about you thing. Because I think this is something that needs to be understood and normalized. And I love, like, your whole spiel in, let's just call it part 1, even though it's probably all going to come into the same bloody thing in the end. Oh, yeah, definitely going to end up coming into all the same video at the end. But at least where I was raised, like, you become a politician for the same reason you become a celebrity, is because, like, you desperately need people to love you, and no one that you've met in the real world will.
Yeah.
And that seems to be like a complete cultural, just pointless.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that at least I view the governance out here seems to be far more similar to the way that aristocracy works in the UK. Like, everyone's related, everyone's fucking everyone else. Eventually they'll be crazy inbred.
For sure. There's a certain element of, corporate incest meets, political inbreeding that I think is constantly happening in this country. But, I think that as I was watching this election and seeing these sort of senatorial races, and as they put these two candidates up, and that's when you're like, who the fuck are these people? And you're like looking at them, and you're like, this is our best. This is what we bring to the table. That's the fucking most qualified person, the two most qualified people in those states. And I was like, I feel like it's harder to make a fucking, commercial art career than it is to fucking, like, run for senator at this point.
Oh, straight. It's harder to be like a fucking contestant on The Bachelor at this
Yeah,
fucking
it's
point.
Like, who the fuck are these people? They look like absolute fucking clowns, and they have very fucking, very few social redeeming qualities. And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like at some point, it just needs to fucking change. And I'm not sure how to make it change, but, that's part of, like, the accelerationist theory of, like, the only way it changes is if it just fucking collapses. And I feel like there's elements of America that are really breaking, or, like, at least being exposed to be broken. I do think that that's sort of a good thing, because, everyone's all, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's like, well, it's pretty fucking clear that it's broken. We need to fix a lot. So, who knows,
Well, I guess, like, the point that I was going to get to is you are overly exposed, not just to Americans, I feel, as a result of, there's Creature. He usually never comes out around other people.
Creature,
so
is that cat's name?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's my baby. He's the one who was my second cat who, like, expanded my heart to the point of being the crazy cat lady. But he's a fucking cunt.
He was the gateway drug.
Oh, straight up. He's my masculine. But, like, just purely as a result of, like, touring, and obviously, I think the last time that's him breaking everything in that bathroom.
I like how he's, like, lifting the seat up, though. Sounds very polite.
Oh, he's very polite. Yeah, he flushes and everything. But, no, because, like, you did your tours in Europe in the space of time that we've known each other, and we really haven't known each other for that long, I don't think.
Yes, we tour a lot. We spend a lot of time in Europe. Even this year, right before COVID, we played 29 shows in Europe up until February. So, like, January to February, we were on the road right as it happened. The only show that was canceled was our show in Milan. And that's when I was like,
I love Milan.
Yeah, and I'm Italian. I was really excited to get back. I used to live in Rome myself, so I was like really excited to get back to Italy. And like, that show was canceled. I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, we spent an extra day in Frankfurt or whatever. And like, I just I didn't think anything of it. Do you know what I mean? The best way you can describe it, because when you're on tour, you're not so hip to affairs. You're very much so living in the moment. You're in that present space. You're either like playing a show or getting to the next show and playing. You know what I mean? So that's another thing I love about touring. It creates this very sort of like present mindedness that I love. Through the exhaustion, of course. So for me, I had no idea the gravity of what COVID was at that time, in February, and we had another tour in the U.S. directly after that, supposed to start on March 13th, a full tour, already paid for, bus deposits, etc. So it sort of felt like we were in Europe, played 29 shows in Europe, all over, and it felt like we were like a skier going down a mountain who had no idea there was an avalanche behind him. Do you know what I mean? So it was just like, we were like, good shit, can't wait to come back, play in the U.S. And everyone was like, whoa, you guys aren't going to play any shows. I'm like, I just played 29 cities, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Our tour's canceled. And then I remember I got back to the U.S. I had exactly 4 days before the next tour was supposed to start. And everyone's like, are you guys still playing? We're like, we're fucking still playing. Like, this is crazy. Of course we're going to still play. Our tour's not getting canceled. You know what I mean? Like, so much has already gone into it. And including like paying for a fucking tour bus. And I remember a day before our tour was supposed to go out, the NBA canceled their season, and that was like the canary in the coal mine for me. I was like, holy shit. Ooh. So if those dudes are like losing like billions of dollars over this, maybe we aren't gonna tour. And I remember like making these like videos leading up to it, like I was like, put on a gas mask, like, tour's still going, can't wait to see it, blah blah blah. And people were like getting upset at me. Like, that's irresponsible. I was like, well, I just didn't fucking know. I had no idea the gravity of the situation because we had just played so many shows. And then like lo and behold, like Live Nation was just like pulled out the rug from under us. It was like a day before we were supposed to go out, we were told, and like we didn't get our bus deposits back. We lost so much money.
Oh, shit.
And like the way we usually do it, it's like, you know, we carry over it. So it's like a lot of money that had invested in the front end of the European tour, because it's essentially one big tour. You know, we're supposed to kind of pay back for the US stuff. So it's like we just came back and like crushing debt. It sucked.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if anyone can...
Everyone's fucking dealing with it, though, you know? It's not like we're, like, the only, like, band out there. It's like everyone went through similar situations. We were just one of those bands that were, like, really, you know...
You're in the thick of it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like, you know... It was just funny, because, like, you know, when you get to apply for all those sort of relief, to get to show, like, loss of wages and all these things, like, here are my tour dates, like, on all these magazine sites and stuff like that, so... It's almost like it finally like might come in now, like where I might actually get some compensation for that, you know, from that government cheese. But no one gave me fucking shit. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, we're making all these things, and everyone kept sending me a different musician relief act or blah blah blah, like every fucking week, and I applied to every single one of them. Not a goddamn fucking dime.
Why doesn't that fucking surprise me though? I feel like this is something that maybe again, immigrant perspective. You know, it just, the arts culture in the UK is so intrinsic because we don't have anything without our arts. We only have alcoholism without our arts. And so, you know, my best friend was lead in the Royal Shakespeare Company up until this all kicked off, and she
you
lost...
mean America doesn't support artistic culture? Get the fuck out of here.
But I just think it's like crazy that like I got sent a stimulus check. I'm not eligible for one, but it had my name on it, and it was like signed by Donald Trump, and I'm like, well, I can't fucking cash this shit without being deported, so never mind.
Yeah,
but then,
I mean,
someone who...
Even things like, I think bands should be tax deductible under like $100,000 of revenue. Do you know what I mean? Like how hard bands work and how little we make, and that like we still have to fucking like, you know, our band's an LLC. It's like if you like, you should be like tax exempt up until like, you know, $100,000 in revenue for your business as a band.
I think you guys should have at least a $250,000 per, like, what's it called, like a purview from like the government just for your mental health upkeep as musicians.
Oh, totally.
To be honest with you,
maybe Sony could also pay for our fucking health insurance. You know what I mean?
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, we don't get any of that shit. And
wait, so actors who are out of work who like, let's be honest.
They do. I think they get that stuff through SAG.
Oh, so it's a union thing.
Yes. So I've been waiting to actually talk about this because it seems like an absolute fucking hunk of bullshit. So we still have to pay union fees on our record. Sony that has to, but it comes out of our recording fee, and it usually comes out of $5,000 that has to be paid to the musicians union. But we still don't get anything for that.
Yeah, what do the musicians like? Nothing.
No one fucking knows.
You're the first person I would think who should run a musicians union. So
I think it's like you know, we're not actually part of the union, but during the record process, like we could be part of the union if we wanted to pay more dues and maybe get that. But like that's for like if you're like part of a string quartet in the fucking Philharmonic. Do you know what I mean? And like you know, your money's like you know, like oh I play every fucking Wednesday. You know what I mean? It's like, but like as a touring musician, there's no health benefits, there's no anything, there's no like, you know, I always yell at Sonny, I'm like, we need fucking some from you guys, like how, you know, we're on the cover of a magazine, none of us have fucked up teeth, like get us some fucking dental coverage or something. You know what I mean? Like, and they're always like, oh. I'm like serious, you know what I mean? Like,
well, and especially like we all know how much money Sony makes, and like even just off their real estate that they don't even fucking need anymore.
I don't even like Sony's such a huge, large, faceless fucking entity that like I just don't even. I'm like.
They released one of my friend's films in full on YouTube instead of just the trailer. So that's my perspective on Sony as an organization.
They fuck up all the time.
Yeah, they like I have not like a photographic memory, but I remember the first time we met when you said like, "Oh, I've just been signed to Sony." I remember thinking like, "Oh shit, these guys are like an actual legitimate band who are going somewhere. This is a big deal." And then that was a couple of years ago, and just in the stories I've heard from Sony since, every time I hear Sony, I'm just like, oh god, that must suck for 3 teeth.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of manage it well.
Would you like another one?
Yeah, I'd love another beer. And I feel like for me, it's like you just have to sort of bend it to your will. So it's like a constant wrestling match that I'm like perfectly comfortable doing. where it's like, you know, if you don't ride it and sort of make it do what it needs to do for you, then it will not do the thing that you need it to do. So I'm comfortable doing that. Obviously it's fairly exhausting, but there's a give and take there, where it's like, you know, Sony will cut you the check to fucking get the house out in Joshua Tree, but obviously needs, like, you know, a fucking budget and a pitch deck, and like, you just have to approach them with a level of seriousness and professionalism to sort of keep them on their toes, in order for it to work, because typically you're just getting a bunch of people who work in salaried positions who turn their phone off at 5 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you know, they're just people like who don't want to lose their jobs. They're risk adverse. They're just people who are just like, in every part of this economy, are just like, hey dude, like, I'm barely fucking have a job here, so like, I'm not going out on a fucking limb for you and ready to lose my job. So, you know, you have to understand that they're a large risk-adverse company. There's obviously really cool people who work there, people who give a shit about the culture of the music, and that's why they got into it. And you have to identify those people and, you know, make your alliances with them, and make sure that you have people on the inside, because, yeah, there's a certain amount of, like, that, you know, you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it by yourself, and, you know, deal with less headaches, but, you know, if you want to fucking, you know... If you want to fucking play with the big boys, you got to be willing to fucking, you know, wrestle the big boys in many ways. So it's like, it's a battle, you know.
I mean, and you had to put together all of the like, almost, yeah, like, go in as, you know, say a tech startup would, and pitch to get the spot out in Joshua Tree, and like that you'll create something.
I'm good at that stuff. Yeah.
I can imagine.
My
like,
background, I mean, I used to work as a creative director in advertising, and as sort of a professional creative career. And art director jobs and stuff like that. That to me, like, I can make a banging pitch deck. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, so your career before music was fairly prolific, like.
Yes, I was doing much better than I am now.
But you're living the dream,
I took the road right to hell, man.
Yeah, man.
No, I mean, in many ways, like, creating Three Teeth is a way for me to atone for my sins as working in advertising. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like you essentially start to feel really dirty, like, working on, like, you know, a vitamin water campaign, and realizing how many people had to fucking drink the high fructose corn syrup water, and you're like, what? This is the mark I'm gonna leave on this fucking world. So, in many ways, it was like we had to come in and undo a lot of that fucking, that vibration and that energy, and culture jam it, if you will.
I was gonna say, good for you for having the ethos to do that, though. I think a lot of people who, even like a lot of the people who I know personally at places like Sony, especially everyone I know in marketing and advertising, and even like PR and public affairs work at this point, it's all just like, no one is a spin doctor anymore. Everyone is a salesperson. And at least with spin, you're giving people the opportunity to see through the bullshit. Now with the kind of advent and normalization of like consumerism, like everything is commodified. Like even 9/11, as you said earlier.
9/11, my favorite brand.
I mean, it's so funny. Like whenever I talk to anyone, because I think, wait, were you born?
82.
Oh, so you're a like cusper millennial. You're like, right. Oh, Lex,
I'm an elder millennial.
Holy shit! I would never have put you in that category. Just like
I'm like the oldest millennial. I think at 82.
Oh wow! Yeah, you really are.
Elder millennial.
So you're definitely part of the problem then.
I'm always part of the problem. I don't have a real job. Look at me. I'm a fucking, you know.
But you had like the quote unquote real job. You did it the right way around.
I even created a startup company that, you know, I'm not sure how much I want to get into that stuff, but yes, I've you know, I started my own company and raised $1.5 million and hired 30 employees. So like, yes, I have played that game. You know, I started a beverage company back in 2007 maybe. And no shit, 2005, something like that. Anyways, after working in advertising, me and another guy from advertising, we essentially made our own beverage company and sold at every Whole Foods across the country and another 400 stores, and you know, it was doing well until the economy completely tanked and
2008.
Yeah, 2008, and at that point, our Series B capital raise was just like wah 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 wah. Like all the investors didn't want to double down, and you know, that's a super cash intensive business, and you know, I had 30 employees, man. Like I've done that. I've played that game. you know.
So you did the political science degree and then went into advertising
Yes.
because you fell out. Like, how the fuck does that occur?
Well, for me, like, political science was more a decision based on what the best program at my school was. And John Cabot University in Rome had a really good political science. This is actually funny. So we had a political science program that you could get a British honors degree because we were also graded. Our papers were graded through University of Wales.
Forgotten about this.
So I also have
Cardiff.
Yes, I have a British honors degree in political science and a bachelor's degree accredited through the U.S. system as well. So
that's fucking
I have
great.
2 degrees in political science.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot about that. That was, I think, back at the very start when we first met. You told me that. And wait, why do I feel like you've also spent time in Cardiff in Wales?
I mean, we toured a ton in the UK.
Oh,
so,
yeah, of course,
we
like
spent
through
a lot of time
music.
with it,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was more of I decided on that by virtue of it was the best program at the school, and it was the one program that you could get the 2 degrees. And for me, it was like almost a 2-for-1. It was like just having your papers graded in both places, just sort of afforded you to say, hey, I'm not sure why I need a British honors degree. Certainly don't even need a bachelor's degree at this point, as I get paid to yell at people from a stage. So ultimately, it was just that was sort of my decision making there. But when I had moved to Miami, which is always because chasing a girl. My girlfriend at the time in Rome was half Italian, half Venezuelan, and when she was like, hey, I want to be closer to my family in Venezuela, let's move to Miami. And I'm like, all right, you're hot, let's go. And, moved to Miami sight unseen, never even been to Miami. And when I got there, it was a big reality check, and Miami actually had a pretty good advertising industry. There were some big companies like Crispin Porter Bogusky, which was sort of one of the cool like young gun advertising agencies that were making really irreverent, funny stuff. And I met a friend who worked there, and at that point I was like, I was a good writer, and I was like, I didn't know fucking shit about art directing, but I was a good enough writer to the point where like I made a bunch of like spec work in terms of like writing 30-second TV spots and like made a fake portfolio. And then I was sending that out to places, and this advertising agency and design agency called Bridger Conway, they liked my work and they brought me in for an interview, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. Where did you work before? I was like, nowhere. I've never worked anywhere. And he's like, this is all spec work? And I was like, yes, sir. And he's like, all right, we can't hire you off spec. I was like, but you like the work? And he's like, I do, but we need someone with experience in this position. I was like, what if you let me come in for 3 weeks without paying me, just cover my gas, and let me just try it out? And he's like, really? I was like, yeah. So at that point, I came in, and next thing you know, like I was just doing my job, and like they really liked me, and I like worked my way all the way up through there as like a creative director position, and then started doing some work at other advertising agencies as well, and sort of just like really developed that skill set. And while doing that, also copywriters generally work with art directors. That's sort of how the creative teams work. So I worked alongside of some really awesome art directors who I just like would kind of steal what they were teaching me, and sort of like, I'm like, well, I feel like people aren't reading as much, so like the future isn't in words, it's going to be pictures. So let me get adept at sort of like, how to art direct. And at that point I sort of became an art director by virtue of just like teaching myself, as well as just learning from some really good art directors. And when I developed the art direction side, that's when I was like more rounded out as a copywriter, art director, which made me sort of a creative director. And at that point, that's when I was like, I gotta get out of here.
I can imagine. And like, given the fact that you've gone through, so you do political science, you do art directing, creative directing, and like the fact, like I would consider you, and have considered you throughout the entire time that we've known one another, sort of a macro social scientist by default, because
I don't know what that means, but it sounds good.
So
I'll take it.
You're very good at analyzing large
Macro
groups
trends,
of people and how it's going to play out into the future, which is something that I think a lot of people don't know how to do. And it's definitely...
That's usually through magic, though. That's through my occult background.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's the
crystal,
gypsy inside of
my
me.
crystal ball in my apartment. There's no real science involved in that.
No, well, no, that's why I've had to develop the job I have.
My minor in economics is really underutilized, I promise.
Well, I always like to joke that I got the qualifications to back up the gypsy spirit, because the gypsy knew what was going on, but no one believed the gypsy. Everyone believes the academic.
Now I can quantify my magic
but
through hard data and pitch it to assholes with money.
But you're good at you're good at foreseeing the future in terms of understanding where those trends are going, which is probably why you've done so well at everything that you have turned your hand to. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass.
No. And I think it's an interesting thing to touch on because I'd never looked at it like that. I more approach it from the idea that I don't trend forecast. I create weather.
Ooh.
I don't look at something and say, hey, where's it going to be? I go, let's take something to somewhere. And that's sort of been my position in trying to create culture in what I do. And even that's sort of something that you learn from advertising. Advertising is the skill set that is a real fucking diabolical skill set. And you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. But going back to talking about these perception management tools and understanding things like tree and brain theory, and you sort of have this idea of there's this sort of 3 parts to your brain. Mm-hmm. And dividing that up, and I actually did some work for a company called MindCode.
Ooh.
Yes.
Tell me everything.
Well, MindCode develops culture codes in terms of how to approach it. And it's this guy, Dr. Clotaire Rappel, who has a book called The Culture Code. It's fascinating, but it's real fucking crazy shit. And you're talking about the main part that you have to appeal to is the sort of reptilian brain.
Yeah.
The amygdala. The
I was about to
ancient
say.
part of your brain that is essentially, fighting and fucking.
It's your fight or flight response. Yes. It's the bit that gets fucked up when you love meth. It's the bit that decides, how you're going to misspend your time.
Most things in this country, in terms of the way that they're advertised, are speaking to that. Mm-hmm. Because that is an impulsive part of the human brain. Yeah. A part that says, I need a new Hummer. It's
your conscious, unconscious biases.
Yes. So, working for this company, MindCode, a bit, which was... almost poached by them, and that's where I was I'm doing some dirty shit. We did some bunch of stuff we were developing culture codes for Walmart, and there's just
it's fucked up and evil, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what my fucking job is right now.
It's just super manipulative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that's sort of where we are at this late stage capitalism, and I think that for me, it was interesting to learn those things. It was interesting to be reverent of those things, and going back to it was as a person that studies a lot of esoteric and hermetic arts and sort of magic and occult, whatever you want to call it. For me to sort of connect those principles were always fascinating to me. But I think that's where I knew deep in my heart of hearts that having this brain and this skill set needed to be applied to something that was going to help elevate the vibration. So a lot of these sort of pitches, a lot of these ideas that people are doing in advertising are trying to sort of create the lowest common denominator. Mm-hmm. How do we boil it down and talk to the fucking reptilian brain? How do we talk to that fighting and fucking brain? But really, I'm if we can do this and sort of appeal to the more super conscious brain and create more of a highest common denominator and elevate human consciousness. I'm not saying that 3 Teeth is actually doing that, but that is the aspiration ultimately.
And I was going to say, if you go into it with that mindset, it's the same way that I look at, say, a company like Cambridge Analytica. They went into it with the mindset of, we are going to make this man president. Yes. And they fucking did it because it's not that hard once you have the raw data. It's just very time consuming. Whereas I think what you're doing with 3 Teeth, probably long term, it's definitely a fucking billion times harder because you're playing from somewhere that's inside your soul and trying to create the norm moving forward, as you said, and create that weather. But also it's that kind of the difference being that with 3 Teeth, you're creating a legacy in any kind of advertising, creative.
Well, it's authentic to me. It's a part of myself that is my true self, and it's how I actually feel, and it's my idea of understanding that, I always have this thought that could you imagine having influence and power and not trying to make the world a better place, not trying to elevate, not trying to sort of, make the human experience and human consciousness more positive and loving? Could you imagine that instead of being oh, I'm wealthy and I'm powerful. What am I doing every day? These people, it behooves me to think of the Dick Cheneys of the world. They're what the fuck is this guy actually? It's guys, generational wealth beyond imagination. To wake up every day and not be hey man, how can I make this fucking world a better place?
I'm going to sign this waterboarding kit for
fun. It blows my fucking mind. It's that's why people believe in reptilians, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say just Dick Cheney in and of himself, I feel is the reason.
That's why people believe fucking reptiles are running around, you know what I mean? It's It's just people are just like fucking old assholes that fucking can't change. You know?
Yeah. Okay. So, because obviously you've been doing this for a minute now, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've got to ask, how did the switch happen from being in advertising? How did Three Teeth come into fruition? Because that's a big fucking leap. And like a lot of the people who follow me,
overnight,
listen to this stuff, they're looking for that kind of inspiration because they all fucking hate their jobs like me.
When I left advertising, the first thing I did was I started my drink company, and it's largely predicated on the fact that me and my friend, who also works in advertising, a very award-winning art director, working on the vitamin water stuff before the vitamin water acquisition to Coca-Cola, which was like some billion fucking dollar insane shit.
Yeah.
Which is how 50 Cent got rich.
I was about to say.
So we had worked on that project to watch it sort of transition into sort of going, oh wait, the acquisitions for a drink company are like that? Why don't we just make a drink company? So while working at our various advertising agencies, we were sort of moonlighting creating this product called Prometheus Springs. Prometheus Springs was a capsaicin spiced sort of beverage. It was a enhanced beverage, if you will, like in terms of like a functional category where it's like, it actually has health benefiting properties, like a kombucha, etc., whatever. Except what we're doing is we're taking the phytonutrient from the chili pepper, which makes it spicy, which has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, has all sorts of, things that when attaching to your substance P inhibitors can actually even help pain relief, etc. So, which is why people do things like the Master Cleanse. This is way before all the Master Cleanse shit, obviously, and people putting cayenne and all this shit. So, we basically built this product. It was fucking branded super crazy, called Prometheus Springs. And we had a friend who threw down some seed money, and we were sort of off to the races. With like making these sort of initial formulas and then finding a flavor house to sort of essentially help develop, and it just turns into large scale cooking, if you will, where you're like, all right, cool, now we need to find, there's this company called Pro Liquitech in Louisville, Kentucky. He's an ex-master distiller who worked for all these bourbon houses and stuff like that will help you if you need, like, develop, in a flavor lab. We'd go in there with like, here's the drinks that we made, how do we scale these?
Okay. Yeah.
It's not cheap. But we had some seed capital from a wealthy friend who, we gave a chunk of equity to. And at that point, we had the formula, we had various flavors, we had a brilliant looking brand because that's what we did, and we ended up sort of pitching our friends as investors. What you call angel investors, not sort of sophisticated, private equity groups or anything like that. So we did get we did get a little private equity in there from some groups, etc. But once you get the first $100,000 investment, investors are like, it just kind of like, it creates this domino effect because it's like, it shows that people trust you.
Yeah.
And we had a good track record at that point in terms of like, these guys are really talented. They've got a strong team, and we brought in a CFO who was like an ex-Wall Street guy because obviously, like, you gotta have one of those in every business.
You always need a white man in a suit, as I like to put it.
And that's so it's like, you can have really cool marketing fucking crazy dudes, but you need someone like who can talk that language, which we couldn't. I learned that a lot from that situation. But we raised $1.5 million, and we were off to the races with this product, and we had X amount of purchase orders. Like, we launched Whole Foods, every fucking Whole Foods in the country.
That's fucking amazing.
That's what brought me to LA.
Oh, you poor
Because we were living in New York at the time when we launched it, and we had this drink company, and it was doing very well. And we ran it for about 3 years, and I remember like pitching to Pepsi because the goal was to package it for acquisition. And,
yeah.
I had like people from Coca-Cola high ups like keeping eyes on us, like they loved us. They thought we were like sort of like crazy mavericks in it. We were kind of like pushing boundaries, and like they're like, this drink's crazy. You guys are making spicy juice. Like, ain't no one drinking spicy juice.
Is that what you guys called it? Spicy juice?
Not really. We called it Prometheus Springs.
You should have called it spicy juice.
We probably should have just called it spicy juice. We tried to sex it up too much with like,
I'm gonna call this like episode spicy juice.
Crazy occult fucking designs and stuff like that. I'm sure if you Google it, you could probably still see it around there.
Fuck yeah! I'm gonna make that like one of the banners. Yeah. I'm gonna like super.
Spicy juice. It was really cool. I learned so much by doing this, and it was an absolute grind. And I could probably fucking run a consulting business in the process. So while doing that, I created my own creative agency because I was already simultaneously kind of doing a lot of that stuff. So we called it creative collective called The Overthrow. And so me and my partner, Sam at the time, who was not my business partner in Prometheus Springs, we created another business that was essentially like we threw crazy events because I knew a ton of people in the music industry, and we were just doing all this awesome stuff. And at that point, it was a chance for me to seed my own product into that stuff without having to pay a marketing agency.
Oh, so smart. I like that.
So that's my sort of weird vertical integration hack. So we started throwing all these events. So like you get other brands, you get like a liquor brand to sponsor the event, and then I would throw my brand in there to mix with it because it made a great mixer. And we just throw all these big events, and it sort of turned into this sort of like
Wait, weren't people just like shitting themselves though? I feel like if I drank something spicy with gin or vodka, and then
you ever had like a jalapeno margarita or something? It's banging. I get it. You're the UK people don't do spicy that well.
We don't do spicy that well. Every time I do,
I mean, I'm better though. And stuff like that. I thought I thought being a colonist might help you adjust to some spices.
I'm getting there. I'm better than I was. I tell you what, quitting smoking, now I can eat, like whenever I used to eat jalapenos, my lips would go like Kardashian, my tongue would swell up. It was fucking great. I didn't have to go and get that shit done.
People pay a lot of money for
that. I was about to say. But no, okay, so you've integrated everything together. People aren't shitting themselves.
Yes, people aren't shitting. People actually might be shitting themselves. I mean,
I would hope so.
I really don't. People are actually constantly always shitting themselves. But anyways, so when I basically say, hey, I'm going to go out to LA to launch the LA office, I moved out to LA and, had a couple strategic hires. And, at this point, like, it was like right as the economy is about to like take a fucking absolute shit. And I had launched a party out here called Lil Death because like I was very much into
Wait.
Yeah.
Like the French version of The Little Death?
Yes.
I gotta give a huge shout out to Josh Lawson right now, who wrote The Little Death, the movie.
Ours was brilliant. Ours was Lil Death.
But you guys did the even kinkier version of it.
We did the mean streets of the interwebs version of it.
Sounds like the kind of party that wouldn't be allowed on nowadays.
No, and it was really awesome, super cool, underground. We did this place called the One-Eyed Gypsy. This was in, I want to say, 2009-ish. And it was as the economy, was taking that dive.
When people really need a consistent little deaths.
Yeah, and I also was like doing it for supplemental income for myself because if anyone is a business owner or entrepreneur of a startup, what you realize is when the money is starting to dry up, your salary goes to operational expense. So I wasn't making any money, so I was like throwing this weekly party. To keep the fucking thing alive, but also like we really making some awesome culture with it. It was the hottest party in LA. It was the coolest thing in LA. We had everyone come playing it, and it was this sort of combination between like, this weird 2009 witch house scene meeting the sort of Berlin concrete techno with like heavy industrial metal, all colliding in one space.
So it was an orgy.
There was an orgy of sound and a really sort of like unique aesthetic building thing. And Lil Death is really what served as the primordial black ooze that created Three Teeth as the band, because it's where I met all my bandmates for one.
No, that's so cool.
And the sound that was being generated, it was like, this triangulation of different sounds, but didn't exist as a singular sound. So as we were talking about making that sound, and not to mention my disdain for, how my business was sort of like falling apart because essentially, the investment was not there. No one wanted to invest anymore because everyone was pulling their money out in general. And I was sort of slave to the grind of my own business, which is funny because it was called Prometheus Springs, and I sort of suffered the fate of Prometheus as being chained to the rock as the capitalistic vulture pecked my liver out of my body. So I sort of developed all this deep disdain for all of this. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I hated all this shit. It was like I got really pissed off at a lot of things in my life about that stuff, and I just knew that I needed to just completely firebomb everything. And it was like, some of my business partners just completely disappeared and bailed. So like I was the one person that had to like sync with the ship, like with the sense of integrity, and explain to our early investors about like, you know what I mean? And like try and package it up to sort of unload it to another company to sort of retain any bit of sort of like, all right, well, we paid back the investors. And it was a super stressful, really hard time in my life that I think could only be described as my first album.
That is like the most fucking musician shit I've ever heard you say. Okay. Oh, okay. So that was how Three Teeth happened. Yeah. But okay, I've got to, like, I hate to keep dragging this on, but purely for my own edification, because I surround myself with musicians when I'm back in Wales, at least. I've learned not to do that here. But you are clearly someone who goes towards opportunity that will pay off. You had no control over 2008. Let's be honest, you'd probably be the next, like, fucking Russ Wiener if it weren't for 2008. Prometheus Springs probably would be at that kind of rock star energy drink level, because you don't fuck about when it comes to what you do. That's why you're on the show today. That's why you and I have stayed in touch, because I can't be fucking bothered with the useless people in this town.
Worker. So it's like whatever I do.
But why did you get into music? Because
I think it was sort of the antithetical premise to like everything else I had done, and I was so upset at, I don't want to say like making the decisions that I made, because it wasn't like I made bad decisions, but I just felt like, 5 years of my life I had flushed down the toilet while I was watching my business disappear during the recession, that I was so just saying, I just want to do like everything that is like completely diametrically opposed to this, which is just something that I fucking love, and I'm not doing this for money, and I want to make a record. And at that point I had no idea of if I could make a record or could make anything cool, and whether or not I had no actual desire to perform at that point either. I was just like, let's just fucking make a record.
Born for that shit though.
Well, I slowly learned that, but initially, like the fact that we made that record, it was just out of the sheer cathartic release of what I needed to get out of me. The fact that anyone else liked it was just bonus. And then I was like, all right, I guess we should do this, because we started getting like booking offers to play shows and stuff like that.
Holy shit.
Yeah, just sort of like, it was like a weird, I always talk about how like one of the most important things in life are the missteps you're going to have. Mm-hmm. So it's like without all these things that just sort of like, when dreams die, they don't disappear. They return to the soil as a technical nutrient that can help sort of reseed another version of the dream. So all the skill set that I had developed really had sort of fertilized Three Teeth into the way I approach creating a band. Obviously with much different sort of completely different moral framework, obviously. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying I was amoral while working in advertising, but the idea that it was sort of, like I said, very diametrically opposed to how I used to think, and to kind of come in and sort of like, culture jam the vibration of my previous self. So it's like, I used a lot of my understanding. It's almost like, how's the way to describe it? Like, in like a comic book or something, where like the government made Wolverine or something as a weapon, like during Project X, but then Wolverine was like, fuck that, and then like had to like kill Sergeant Stryker and be like, fuck that shit, now let's go fight for good. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it was a weapon.
I love that I knew every single reference in that as well.
Good. That's obscure X-Men shit right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But wait, the way that you speak about how this occurred, I mean, do you believe in God? Do you have that kind of like understanding, or do you have any kind of faith or anything outside of?
I'm a deeply spiritual person. I'm not sure I would say I believe in like, this sort of like old man in the sky with a beard. Yeah, but to me, do I believe in a higher power? Do I believe in something bigger than us? I think it would be foolish not to. Mm-hmm. And yes, I have a sort of reverence for, let's just say, the oneness, if you will. The nameless name of 1,000 names. The idea that we can't even with our own mouths create a sound that could be God. You know what I mean? Like, it is, it's as, it's like when Lovecraft created the name Cthulhu. Like, you don't even know how to say it. He made it so you couldn't say it because it's not a language that you're supposed to be able to say, or a word you're supposed to be able to say. That's why everyone says a different name for it. So I think we should have something for God that we should all go, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. Like God is almost like a white noise.
Yeah, exactly. Or a fucking pink noise, or some sort of noise, or a full spectrum of noise. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe he is the prism, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or she, they. What? Who the fuck cares in this day and age? Yeah, exactly. As long as it's more important than you as an individual.
Yeah, as long as there's a reason to sort of be reverent of something bigger than yourself, which you always should be, because we're a pimple on the ass of the universe for sure. Like we're very small.
I will say that. And I work with academics all day, every day. That's my fucking day job, is getting people through their PhDs. I work with a shitload more people that have faith than don't. And they are all the first people. The ones who don't have faith, I actually find, are the ones who don't go out and create the change that they...
People, those are the same people who are like, oh, yeah, aliens don't exist or something like that.
Yes, they
it's
do.
Like, you know, for me, it's like, I can't remember the exact person who said it, but there's some physicist who was explaining that, you know, it's like going out to the ocean with a cup, scooping a cup of water out of the ocean, looking at your cup and going, well, there's no fish in my cup. There must be no fish in that sea. That's the same level of reasoning for people to be like, hey, no aliens, dude. Haven't seen them. Must be no aliens.
Yeah, Dad. Do you understand now why Mum and I bonded over this shit?
Yeah. So there's definitely... Yeah, Dad, pay attention.
Yeah, fuck's sake, Hugh. No,
So,
he's good. He believes in music.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that to have a sort of understanding of more of the sort of mystical qualities of life and appreciation for the question marks in life, I think that's a big thing that I sort of always have, where I'm like, I love question marks. I love, you know, things that we don't understand, you know, with all the infinite wisdom that we have, things that we're still perplexed by. Because I think that that's the real hallmark of intelligence, of knowing that we don't know everything. When we like to, you know, sort of be these sort of cosmic schmucks of like, yeah, I know this, and I know that, and this is this and that, and I'm like, you know, shit.
Yeah.
We can't even fucking understand like the basic reason of why we're here. So maybe don't pretend like you fucking know everything.
Oh gosh, wouldn't the world be so much better if we
might be sane? And that goes back to the E prime dispensing is from your language, which is so hard. And part of my theory on why it's so hard to dispense is from our language is because capitalism teaches us to speak in sort of superlative context. Not only in absolute context, but superlative context. We're oftentimes saying, oh, that shit's the best. I'm like,
it's fucking not.
It's not. Like, we always looked at it, it's like we're all pitching. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all have this sort of...
hyperbole bleeds into that to the extent where it's
constantly like that, you know? And unfortunately... That's in many ways, that's very toxic semantically and semiotically for us to sort of continue to be like, you know, oh, this is the best and this is definitive and this is absolute. And, you know, it's like, to me, you know, oh, that's the best band is even one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Oh, you guys are the best band.
No, but not, I'm not saying us, but I'm saying anyone to be like, that's the best band. It's like, there's no such thing as a fucking best band. You know, or when people ask me all the time in interviews, what's your favorite this? And I'm always like, I don't fucking know. I don't answer questions that are sort of nonsensical superlatives. I just find it to be very futile.
Well, High Fidelity gave you the get out of jail free card for that. That's why I do everything in top fives, because it changes by the fucking minute.
Yeah, totally.
But I feel like, a lot of the relativity has very much been lost.
Very much so. The nuance has been lost.
Oh, well... I'm hoping that the next time we do an interview together, that maybe some nuance won't be lost. Maybe we'll have something...
Maybe the world will still be spinning, hopefully.
I mean, wouldn't that be nice? I'm going to hope for it.
Fingies crossed.
Fingies crossed. Well, actually, my goal would, at this point, I'm going to throw it out into the universe. So if you're listening, that I would love to come and interview all of you guys up in Joshua Tree next month when because you're heading back out to the desert.
Yeah, but we're typically rarely all together, so it's like I'm going to be out there and doing just mostly vocal production at a studio.
I don't really give a shit about who's there. It's more the aesthetic qualities of interviewing for the creative direction and what have you.
Of course. To be inspired by the Joshua Tree itself.
I mean,
which is actually just a glory hole for Bono, but we're not going to get into that.
Oh, fuck Bono though. Lex, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah, we were long overdue. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so.
Way too long overdue. Right, let's get into the conversation that we can't have on air.
Of course.
Thank you, darling.
You're very welcome.